This comes just a day after President Biden signed into law the Speak Out Act that prohibits the enforcement of non-disclosure agreements when it comes to cases of sexual assault and harassment in the workplace if they were signed before the alleged incident. One of the main proponents behind the bill is Gretchen Carlson, formerly of Fox. She joins us now. Gretchen, today the House Oversight Committee concluded that, quote, bullying and intimidation, sexual harassment, and a culture of fear pervaded the Washington Commanders football organization for many years. This was all under the leadership of Commanders owner Dan Snyder. What's your reaction to the investigation findings?
I'm not surprised. Look, misogyny and harassment are all about power. And many times people in these roles who are misogynistic believe that they're above the law. And, you know, he also did not allow anyone to get out of their non-disclosure agreements to be able to testify for this report, which is also not surprising. So it's just disappointing. But look, the work I've been doing for the last 6.5 years is changing the environment so that this is no longer acceptable. And I'm working to give people their voices back so that they can actually fight back against misogynists who continue to try to exert their power over them.
Well, let's talk about that because you helped usher 2 bills through Congress to help end the culture of toxic workplaces. Explain to us what the 2 bills do.
So the first one was signed by the president, and I was with him on that day on March 3rd. This gets rid of forced arbitration clauses for harassment and assault in the workplace. And people will say, well, what's that? Forced arbitration clauses have become pervasive. 84% of all Americans have them in their workplace contracts right now. What that means is you don't get to go to an open jury process. You go to a secret chamber. And that's what's been happening to tons of women and other people who face discrimination over the years. And that's why we never knew about these cases, because they were going away to secrecy. That law was one of the biggest labor law changes in the last 100 years. And then we immediately got to work on the Speak Out Act because we also want to take on non-disclosure agreements. We believe that these are the 2 silencing mechanisms that keep these kinds of stories from the general public. And that was signed by the president yesterday. We got overwhelmingly bipartisan support for both of these bills. So in a span of just 8 months, Jake, my organization, along with Julie Roginski, Lift Our Voices, we have passed some of the biggest labor law changes for women in the last 100 years.
That's fantastic. Congratulations. And as you mentioned, Dan Snyder, he refused to release employees from their NDAs, their non-disclosure agreements, so they could speak to Congress for the investigation. Would that have been a violation of the law that just passed, or is it just going forward?
No, this is retroactive. And so if you currently have a forced arbitration clause in your contract, or if you have an NDA that you signed on your first day of work, you don't have to abide by that anymore if you want to bring forth harassment or assault claims. That's why this is so monumental. I mean, this is a game changer for people to be able to own their own truths and own their own voices and their own experiences. And in 2022, at Lift Our Voices, we believe that that is what is just.
What's your message to anyone out there who might be currently struggling in a toxic workplace environment and is terrified to speak up because they might lose their job?
Yeah, that's still the culture that we live in. And so, you know, we start this report talking about the commanders. I often say that passing 2 bipartisan bills into law in the last year was actually easier in the most hyper-political time of my generation than changing culture. And that's saying a lot because it is so embedded in the American culture, unfortunately, that we penalize the people who have the courage to come forward and we force them out and they never work again. And then we somehow continue to prop up predators even when they're not the moneymakers at the company. So we are also working at Lift Our Voices about trying to get to the culture, and we are chipping away at that by passing these laws. And we encourage companies to get on the right side of history with us and change their policies to become more transparent. That's the way that workers want it. And in 2022, they deserve to know that they won't be silenced.
You signed an NDA when you settled with Fox. Would your legislation get you out of that NDA?
No. This legislation is as far as we could go to get bipartisan support. This is only pre-dispute non-disclosure agreements that go away. So my NDA is still fully intact, unfortunately. But certainly I would have a lot to say if I was ever able to get out of my NDA. But the one thing I did get in my settlement, Jake, was that they gave me the opportunity to speak about these issues, and I have taken full advantage of that. I'm changing the workplace culture for millions of people in America that I will never, ever meet. And that to me will be my legacy. And it will be far more important than anything else I've ever done in my life, except having my 2 children.
All right. Well, congratulations again to you, Gretchen. Good work.